First contact. Ambassador Zixara nervously adjusted her ceremonial robes as the sleek alien shuttle approached Earth's orbit. The blue and green planet loomed large in the view screen, beautiful yet terrifying in its implications. This was humanity's homeworld, the cradle of a species that had exploded onto the galactic stage with a ferocity that left the established spacefaring races reeling. Zixara's species, the Novanians, had been tasked with establishing diplomatic relations with these newcomers. As the most seasoned negotiator of her people, Zixara had been chosen for this crucial mission. But as she gazed at the rapidly approaching planet, she couldn't help but wonder if her skills would be enough to bridge the vast gulf between their civilizations. Ambassador, we're receiving a transmission from Earth's orbital defense platform, choked her aide, Krell. The young Novanian's antenna twitched with nervous energy. Zixara took a deep breath, centering herself. Put it through. A gruff human voice filled the cabin. Novanian diplomatic vessel, this is Earth orbital defense. You are cleared for approach. Follow the designated flight path to New Geneva spaceport. Any deviation will be considered hostile action. Understood, Earth orbital defense, Zixara replied, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. We will comply. As the shuttle began its descent, Zixara caught her first glimpse of humanity's military might. Sleek warships bristling with weapons platforms hung in geosynchronous orbit, their designs a stark contrast to the flowing organic shapes favored by Novanian architects. Even more unsettling were the massive space stations, each easily the size of a small moon, that served as the backbone of Earth's orbital defense network. By the cosmic egg, Krell whispered, his normally blue skin paling to a sickly lavender. How can such a young species have built all this? Zixara had no answer. The reports she'd studied during her journey had painted a picture of a species driven by an insatiable curiosity and an almost reckless determination. In just a few short centuries, since discovering faster-than-light travel, humanity had expanded across dozens of star systems, overtaking races that had been plying the spacelands for millennia. The shuttle broke through Earth's atmosphere, and Zixara got her first look at the planet's surface. Sprawling megacities stretched as far as the eye could see, their towering skyscrapers reaching for the heavens. Flying vehicles darted between the buildings in carefully choreographed patterns, while on the ground, millions of humans went about their daily lives. It's overwhelming, Zixara murmured, her 4 eyes struggling to take in all the details at once. The shuttle touched down on a landing pad atop a massive structure that Zixara assumed was the New Geneva spaceport. As the engines powered down, she took one final moment to compose herself. The fate of her people, perhaps even the entire galaxy, rested on her ability to negotiate with these unpredictable humans. Remember, she told Krell, we are here as equals. Do not show fear or subservience. The humans respect strength. Krell nodded, though Zixara could see he was still trembling slightly. The young aide took his place behind her as the shuttle's doors hissed open. A blast of Earth's atmosphere hit Zixara, carrying a complex mix of scents she couldn't begin to identify. The gravity was slightly stronger than she was used to, and she had to concentrate to maintain her dignity as she descended the ramp. A group of humans waited for them on a landing pad. Most wore crisp uniforms that Zixara recognized as belonging to Earth's United Defense Force, but it was the man at the center of the group that drew her attention. He stood a full head taller than his companions, with broad shoulders and a bearing that radiated authority. His skin was a rich brown, and his close-cropped hair was just beginning to show streaks of gray at the temples. But it was his eyes that truly captured Zixara, a piercing green that seemed to look right through her. Ambassador Zixara, the man said, his deep voice carrying easily over the ambient noise of the spaceport. I am General Marcus Blackwood, representing Earth's diplomatic corps. Welcome to our world. Zixara inclined her head in the traditional Novanian greeting. Thank you, General Blackwood. I bring greetings and hopes for peace from the Novanian collective. Blackwood's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. Peace is a noble goal, Ambassador, but you'll find that humanity has learned to be cautious when it comes to alien promises. The subtle threat in his words was not lost on Zixara. She stood straighter, meeting Blackwood's gaze. The Novanian Collective has no hostile intentions towards Earth or its colonies, General. We seek only mutual understanding and cooperation. We'll see, Blackwood replied. He gestured towards a sleek vehicle waiting nearby. If you'll follow me, we've prepared accommodations for you at the diplomatic quarter. We can begin formal negotiations tomorrow, after you've had a chance to rest and acclimate. As they walked towards the vehicle, Zixara couldn't help but notice the heavily armed soldiers that flanked their group. Their weapons were unlike anything she had seen before, compact yet radiating an aura of lethality that made her scales tingle with unease. The ride to the diplomatic quarter was a blur of sights and sounds that left Zixara's head spinning. New Geneva was a riot of colors and movement, with humans of every description going about their business alongside a scattering of other alien species. Holographic advertisements flickered on the sides of buildings, while news tickers scrolled by with updates on everything from interstellar politics to the latest entertainment sensations. It's quite a lot to take in, isn't it? Blackwood said, noticing her wide-eyed stare. Zixara nodded, grateful for the chance to engage in some less formal conversation. It's incredible. The energy of this place, the sheer variety, I've never seen anything like it. Blackwood's expression softened slightly. Humanity has always prided itself on its diversity. It's one of our greatest strengths. And yet you present such a unified front to the galaxy, Zixara observed. The general's eyes hardened again. We've had to. The galaxy can be a dangerous place, especially for newcomers. Unity has been key to our survival and success. Before Zixara could respond, the vehicle came to a stop outside a towering structure of gleaming metal and glass. We've arrived, Blackwood announced. Your quarters are on the 200th floor. There's a secure comlink if you need to contact your ship or your government. I'll send someone to escort you to the negotiations tomorrow morning. As Zixara and Krell were led to their rooms, the ambassador's mind raced. This first encounter had been cordial enough on the surface, but she could sense the undercurrent of tension. The humans were clearly wary of alien intentions, and given their rapid rise to power, who could blame them? But there was something else too. A dynamism, a barely contained energy that seemed to radiate from every human she'd encountered. It was at once terrifying and oddly exhilarating. In the privacy of her quarters, Zixara allowed herself a moment of doubt. How could she hope to negotiate with a species that seemed to operate on a completely different wavelength? The fate of the galaxy might well rest on her ability to find common ground with these enigmatic humans. As she gazed out at the glittering expanse of New Geneva, Zixara made a silent vow. She would find a way to bridge the gap between their peoples, no matter the cost. The alternative, a galaxy plunged into war with this young, terrifyingly capable species, was too horrifying to contemplate. Little did she know that events were already in motion that would test her resolve to its very limits, and forge an unlikely alliance that would change the course of galactic history forever. Cultural clash. The morning of the negotiations dawned bright and clear, but Zixara's nerves were anything but settled. She had spent much of the night studying human customs and diplomatic protocols, trying to prepare herself for the challenge ahead. Now, as she stood before the mirror in her quarters, adjusting her formal robes one last time, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was woefully unprepared. A chime at the door announced the arrival of her escort. To Zixara's surprise, it was General Blackwood himself who stood in the corridor. "Good morning, Ambassador," he said, his voice as commanding as ever. "I thought I'd accompany you personally to the negotiations. It's not every day we potentially reshape the future of galactic politics." Zixara inclined her head in greeting, noting the subtle shift in Blackwood's demeanor. He seemed not exactly friendlier, but perhaps more open than he had been the day before. "I appreciate the gesture, General," she replied. "I must admit, I'm curious to see how humans conduct their diplomatic affairs." Blackwood's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. "Oh, I think you'll find our methods interesting." The journey to the negotiation chamber was filled with tense silence. Zixara used the time to center herself, drawing on years of diplomatic training. As they approached a set of imposing doors, Blackwood paused. "A word of advice, Ambassador," he said, his voice low. "Humans value directness. Don't dance around issues or rely too heavily on flowery language. Be clear, be concise, and above all, be honest. We have a saying, cut the bullshit. It'll serve you well in there." Before Zixara could respond, Blackwood pushed open the doors, revealing a large circular room. Representatives from various human factions sat around a massive table, their faces a mix of curiosity and suspicion. At the head of the table sat a woman whose very presence commanded attention. "Ambassador Zixara," Blackwood announced, "may I present President Elena Varga of the United Earth Government." President Varga stood, extending a hand. Zixara, recalling her cultural briefings, took it in a firm handshake. "Welcome, Ambassador," Varga said, her voice carrying easily across the room. "Let's skip the pleasantries and get down to business, shall we? Why exactly is the Novanian Collective suddenly so interested in diplomatic relations with Earth?" Zixara blinked, taken aback by the directness of the question. She glanced at Blackwood, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Right, cut the bullshit." "Madam President," Zixara began, straightening her posture, "the truth is, humanity's rapid expansion and technological advancement have unsettled many in the galactic community. The Novanian Collective believes that establishing formal diplomatic ties and fostering mutual understanding is crucial to maintaining peace and stability in the galaxy." A murmur ran through the assembled humans. President Varga's eyes narrowed slightly, unsettled. "That's a diplomatic way of saying scared shitless, isn't it, Ambassador?" Zixara felt her scales flush with embarrassment, but she held her ground. "Fear often stems from a lack of understanding, Madam President. We hope these negotiations will help alleviate those fears and pave the way for cooperation rather than conflict." A noble sentiment, a gravelly voice interjected. Zixara turned to see an older human male, his face lined with scars, leaning forward. "But tell me, Ambassador, what exactly does the Novanian Collective bring to the table? Why should we bother with an alliance?" "Admiral Zao, please," President Varga said, though her tone suggested she shared the sentiment. Zixara took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. The Novanian Collective possesses technologies and scientific knowledge accumulated over millennia of space exploration. We offer to share this knowledge with humanity to help guide your species as you take your place among the galactic community. The room erupted in a cacophony of voices. Some humans seemed intrigued by the offer, while others reacted with obvious skepticism or outright hostility. "Guide us," Admiral Zao scoffed. "Like children, we've managed just fine on our own, Ambassador." "Perhaps too fine," another voice cut in. This came from a slender woman with striking silver hair. "Ambassador, I'm Dr. Ava Chen, Earth's lead xenobiologist. While I appreciate the Collective's offer, surely you must realize how it sounds to us. Humanity has prided itself on its self-reliance and ingenuity. The implication that we need guidance is not likely to sit well with many." Zixara felt the situation slipping away from her. She glanced at General Blackwood, who stood impassively by the door, his face unreadable. No help there. I apologize if my words caused offense," Zixara said, struggling to regain her footing. "That was not my intent. Perhaps it would be better to frame this as an exchange of knowledge? A partnership of equals, each bringing their own strengths to the table." President Varga leaned back in her chair, studying Zixara intently. "A partnership of equals," she repeated, her tone thoughtful. "An interesting proposal, Ambassador. But tell me, how can we be sure the Novanian Collective views us as equals? Your earlier comments suggest otherwise." Zixara felt a bead of sweat, or whatever the Novanian equivalent was, trickled down her back. This was not going at all how she had envisioned. The human's directness, their quick minds and quicker tongues, left her feeling constantly off balance. Madam President, esteemed representatives of Earth, she began, forcing herself to meet each of their gazes in turn. I will be honest, as you value honesty. The Novanian collective, like many established galactic powers, was initially wary of humanity's rapid advancement. But in preparing for these negotiations, in studying your history and achievements, I have come to believe that this wariness was misplaced. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Humanity has accomplished in centuries what took other races millennia. Your adaptability, your drive, your sheer determination in the face of adversity. These are qualities to be admired, not feared. The Novanian collective does not seek to guide you, but to learn from you, even as we offer our own knowledge in return. A hush fell over the room. Zixara held her breath, wondering if she had overstepped, if her impromptu speech had doomed the negotiations before they could truly begin. Then, to her shock, President Varga began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle and grew into a full-bodied sound that seemed to release the tension in the room. Well said, Ambassador, Varga said, wiping a tear from her eye. I think we may have underestimated you. You're learning our ways quicker than we anticipated. Zixara blinked in confusion. Thank you. General Blackwood stepped forward, a hint of approval in his eyes. What the President means, Ambassador, is that you've passed a first test. We needed to see how you'd react under pressure, how you'd handle our unique approach to diplomacy. A test. Zixara felt a mix of relief and indignation. This entire meeting was a test. Welcome to human diplomacy, Dr. Chen said with a wry smile. We find it cuts through a lot of the usual posturing and gets to the heart of matters much quicker. Admiral Zhao nodded grudgingly. You held your ground, Ambassador. That counts for something in my book. President Varga stood, her expression turning serious once more. Don't misunderstand, Ambassador Zixara. This was just the beginning. We have a long way to go before any sort of formal alliance can be established, but you've shown us that the Novanian collective might just be worth talking to. As the meeting adjourned and plans were made for further negotiations, Zixara felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had survived her first true encounter with human diplomacy, but she knew the real challenges were yet to come. Little did she know that fate was about to throw her into a situation that would test not just her diplomatic skills, but her very understanding of what it meant to be human, and what it might mean for the future of the galaxy. Unexpected alliance. The days following the initial negotiation blurred together for Zixara. Each meeting brought new challenges, new facets of human culture and politics to navigate. She found herself both exhausted and exhilarated by the mental gymnastics required to keep up with her human counterparts. It was during one such meeting, deep in discussion about the potential exchange of terraforming technologies, that alarms began blaring throughout the building. President Varga's comlink chirped urgently. Her face paled as she listened to the message. We have a situation, she announced, her voice tense. A terrorist group has seized control of our primary orbital defense platform. They're threatening to use it against civilian targets unless we meet their demands. The room erupted into chaos. Amid the shouting and frantic communications, Zixara caught snippets of information. The terrorists were a radical anti-alien group, convinced that any diplomacy with extraterrestrial species would lead to humanity's downfall. General Blackwood's voice cut through the din. Madam President, I have a strike team ready to deploy, but the terrorists have locked down all standard access points. We need a way in that they won't expect. Zixara felt a sudden, wild idea form in her mind. General, she said, her voice surprisingly steady, I believe I can help. All eyes turned to her. Blackwood's expression was a mix of surprise and suspicion. How? Novanian biotechnology, Zixara explained quickly. We have personal cloaking devices that can render the user nearly invisible to most detection systems. If I understand correctly, your orbital platforms use similar sensor arrays to our own vessels. President Varga's eyes narrowed. And you just happen to have these devices with you. Zixara felt her scales flush. It's standard equipment for Novanian diplomats. For emergencies. A tense silence fell over the room. Zixara could almost see the wheels turning in the humans' minds, weighing the potential risks and benefits of accepting alien help in such a critical situation. It was Blackwood who broke the silence. "It could work," he said, his tone grudging but determined. "But I'm not sending my team in blind with unfamiliar tech. I'll go myself, along with a small squad." "I'm coming with you," Zixara said, surprising even herself with her boldness. Blackwood's eyebrows shot up. "Absolutely not. This is a military operation, not a diplomatic soiree." "With all due respect, General," Zixara countered, drawing herself up to her full height. "I'm the only one who fully understands how to operate this technology. And as you said, we can't risk your team going in blind." For a long moment, Blackwood stared at her, his piercing green eyes seeming to look right through her. Then, to Zixara's shock, he barked out a laugh. "You've got guts, Ambassador," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "I'll write you in, but you follow my orders to the letter, understood?" Zixara nodded, her hearts racing with a mix of fear and excitement. "Understood, General." The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Zixara found herself aboard a sleek human stealth shuttle, surrounded by grim-faced soldiers in high-tech combat gear. She showed Blackwood and his team how to operate the Novanian cloaking devices, marveling at how quickly they adapted to the alien technology. As they approached the massive orbital platform, Zixara felt a flutter of panic in her stomachs. What was she doing? She was a diplomat, not a soldier. She had no place in a military operation. Blackwood must have sensed her unease. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle. "Having second thoughts, Ambassador?" Zixara took a deep breath, steadying herself. "No," she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "I'm ready." Blackwood nodded, a hint of respect in his eyes. "Good. Remember, stay close to me and do exactly as I say. We're going to get through this." The insertion went smoother than Zixara could have hoped. The Novanian cloaking devices worked perfectly, allowing them to slip past the terrorists' guards undetected. As they made their way through the sprawling orbital station, Zixara found herself in awe of the humans' efficiency and teamwork. They moved like a single organism, each soldier anticipating the other's actions with an almost preternatural awareness. It wasn't until they reached the main control room that things went sideways. One of the terrorists, more observant than his comrades, noticed the slight shimmer in the air that betrayed their presence. In the chaos that followed, Zixara found herself separated from the main group, cornered by a pair of snarling humans with weapons trained on her position. Time seemed to slow. Zixara saw Blackwood across the room, his eyes wide with alarm as he realized her predicament. She saw the terrorist leader, his finger tightening on the trigger of a device that would turn the orbital platform's weapons on the unsuspecting planet below. In that moment, Zixara did something that went against every instinct, every bit of training she had ever received. She deactivated her cloaking device. The terrorists froze, momentarily shocked by the sudden appearance of an alien in their midst. It was all the opening Blackwood and his team needed. In a flurry of precise, coordinated movement, they neutralized the threat, securing the control room and disarming the weapons. As the dust settled, Blackwood approached Zixara, his expression unreadable. "That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen," he said. Zixara let out a shaky laugh. "Honestly, General, I'm not sure which it was either." To her surprise, Blackwood's face split into a grin. "Well, whichever it was, it saved a lot of lives today. You did good, Ambassador." As they made their way back to Earth, the adrenaline of the mission fading, Zixara found herself reflecting on the day's events. She had seen a side of humanity that went beyond the diplomatic posturing and political maneuvering. She had witnessed their courage, their quick thinking, their unwavering commitment to protecting their own. But more than that, she had surprised herself. In the heat of the moment, she had acted not as a Novanian diplomat, but as someone willing to risk everything to save lives, human lives. As the blue-green orb of Earth grew larger in the viewscreen, Zixara realized that something fundamental had changed. The lines between us and them, between Novanian and human, had blurred. In facing danger together, in working toward a common goal, they had forged a bond that transcended species. It was a small step, perhaps, but a significant one, and as Zixara caught Blackwood's eye, seeing the newfound respect and understanding there, she dared to hope that it might be the first step toward a true alliance, one built not just on political necessity, but on mutual trust and shared experience. Little did she know that this unexpected alliance would soon be tested in ways none of them could have imagined, as forces both on Earth and beyond sought to undermine the fragile peace they had begun to build. Betrayal and sacrifice. The aftermath of the orbital platform incidents sent shockwaves through both human and Novanian societies. News of the alien ambassador's role in thwarting the terrorist attacks spread rapidly, sparking intense debate and speculation on both sides. For Zixara, the days that followed were a whirlwind of debriefings, press conferences, and tense communications with the Novanian High Council. She found herself thrust into the spotlight, hailed as a hero by some and viewed with deepening suspicion by others. It was during one such debriefing, nearly a week after the incident, that Zixara noticed something odd. General Blackwood, usually a commanding presence in these meetings, seemed distracted, almost agitated. His eyes darted around the room, and he kept checking his comlink with poorly concealed urgency. As the meeting adjourned, Zixara approached him. "General, is everything all right?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Blackwood's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might brush her off. Then, to her surprise, he let out a heavy sigh. "Walk with me, Ambassador," he said quietly. "There's something you need to know." They made their way to a secluded balcony overlooking the sprawling cityscape of New Geneva. Blackwood's posture was tense, his eyes scanning their surroundings as if expecting an attack at any moment. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this balcony," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We've uncovered evidence of a conspiracy, one that goes far beyond that group of terrorists. There are factions within both our governments working to sabotage these peace talks." Zixara felt her stomachs clench with dread. "Both our governments, you mean?" Blackwood nodded grimly. "We've intercepted communications between human extremists and certain members of your High Council. They're planning something big, Ambassador, something that could plunge both our species into war." The implications hit Zixara like a physical blow. She had to lean against the balcony railing to steady herself. "Why are you telling me this?" she managed to ask. Blackwood's green eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of determination and something that might have been regret. "Because I need your help, Zixara, and because I trust you." The use of her name, without her title, wasn't lost on Zixara. She straightened, squaring her shoulders. "What do you need me to do?" What followed was a dizzying descent into a world of shadows and secrets. Zixara found herself working alongside Blackwood and a small team of trusted operatives, human and Novanian alike, to unravel the conspiracy threatening to tear apart everything they had worked for. Their investigation led them from the gleaming towers of New Geneva to the seedy underbelly of off-world colonies, from high-tech data havens to ancient Novanian temples. At every turn, they faced danger and betrayal, never knowing who they could truly trust. Through it all, Zixara felt herself changing. The prim and proper diplomat was giving way to someone harder and more determined. She learned to handle human weapons, to move with the stealth and precision of a covert operative. And with each passing day, she found herself growing closer to Blackwood, their shared mission forging a bond that transcended mere alliance. It all came to a head on a remote mining outpost on the fringes of human space. They had traced the conspiracy to its source, a shadowy cabal of human industrialists and Novanian elders who believed that war between their species was inevitable and sought to profit from the conflict. As Zixara and Blackwood's team infiltrated the outpost, they knew they were walking into a trap, but it was the only way to gather the evidence they needed to expose the conspiracy once and for all. The battle that ensued was chaos incarnate. Human and Novanian technology clashed in a dazzling display of destructive power. Zixara found herself fighting back-to-back with Blackwood, her newly acquired combat skills put to the ultimate test. In the heat of the fight, Zixara spotted the conspiracy's ringleader, a high-ranking member of her own High Council, attempting to escape with a data core that held the key to unraveling the entire plot. Without hesitation, she gave chase, her heart pounding with exertion and determination. She cornered the elder in a dead-end corridor, her borrowed human pistol trained steadily on his chest. "It's over," she said, her voice firm despite her ragged breathing. "Surrender and face justice for what you've done." The elder's face twisted into a sneer. "Justice? You naive child. Don't you see? War is coming, whether you like it or not. I'm simply ensuring our people are on the winning side." By betraying everything we stand for, Zixara shot back. By allying with criminals and extremists. By doing what is necessary, the elder rode. Humans are a plague upon the galaxy. They must be contained, controlled, or destroyed. And if a few billion lives are lost in the process, so be it. Zixara felt a chill run down her spine at the cold calculation in the elder's voice. This was madness, a level of xenophobia and callousness she had never imagined possible among her own people. She was so focused on the elder that she almost missed the subtle movement of his hand, reaching for a concealed weapon. Almost. 2 shots rang out in quick succession. The elder's eyes widened in shock as he slumped to the ground, the hidden blaster falling from his lifeless fingers. Zixara lowered her smoking pistol, her whole body trembling. She had taken a life, not in the heat of battle, but in a cold, calculated moment of judgment. The weight of it threatened to crush her. "Zixara!" Blackwood's voice cut through her shock. He rounded the corner at a run, his face streaked with sweat and grime. "Are you all right? I heard shots." He trailed off as he took in the scene before him. Without a word, he crossed to Zixara, gently taking the pistol from her shaking hands. "You did what you had to do," he said softly, his hand coming to rest on her shoulder. "You saved countless lives today." Zixara looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "At what cost, Marcus? What have I become?" Blackwood pulled her into a fierce embrace, heedless of the differences in their physiology. "You've become a hero," he murmured into her ear. "A bridge between our peoples, someone willing to make the hard choices for the greater good." As they stood there, surrounded by the aftermath of battle, Zixara realized that Blackwood was right. She had changed irrevocably. But perhaps that change was necessary. Perhaps it was only by shedding their preconceptions, by embracing the complexity and sometimes the darkness within themselves and each other, that humans and Novanians could truly come together. The conspiracy had been stopped, but Zixara knew this was only the beginning. There would be fallout from these events, political and personal. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But as she looked at Blackwood, seeing the trust and something more in his eyes, Zixara felt a flicker of hope. Together, they had forged something new, a partnership that transcended species, a shared understanding born of struggle and sacrifice. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And perhaps in doing so, they would show both their peoples that a true alliance, one built on mutual respect, trust, and shared adversity, was not only possible but essential for the future of the galaxy. Battle for understanding. The fallout from the conspiracy's exposure was immediate and far-reaching. Both human and Novanian societies were rocked by the revelations, trust shattered and long-held beliefs called into question. In the chaos that followed, Zixara and Blackwood found themselves at the center of a storm, fighting not just for peace between their species, but for their very survival. The Novanian High Council, reeling from the betrayal within its ranks, withdrew from the peace talks. Hardliners seized control, pushing for a more aggressive stance against humanity. On Earth, anti-alien sentiment surged, fueled by fear and mistrust. The fragile progress towards peace seemed on the verge of collapse. It was in this tense atmosphere that a new threat emerged, one that would force humans and Novanians to confront their prejudices and fears in the crucible of shared danger. The first attacks came without warning. Mysterious vessels, unlike anything seen before, struck at both human and Novanian outposts on the fringes of explored space. The devastation was total, entire colonies wiped out in a matter of hours. As reports flooded in, Zixara and Blackwood found themselves summoned to an emergency meeting of Earth's Security Council. The chamber was thick with tension, fear, and anger palpable in the air. President Varga, her face drawn with worry, addressed the assembled leaders. "We face an unprecedented threat," she began, her voice grave. "These attacks bear all the hallmarks of a coordinated invasion. We've designated this unknown enemy as the Swarm, based on their tactics and the sheer number of vessels involved." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Admiral Zhao leaned forward, his scarred face grim. "Madam President, I recommend an immediate mobilization of our fleet. We must strike back before these aliens gain a foothold in our territory." "And what of the Novanian colonies that have been attacked?" Zixara interjected, unable to remain silent. "Will you abandon them to this threat?" Zhao's eyes narrowed. "With all due respect, Ambassador, our priority must be the defense of Earth and its colonies. We can't afford to spread our forces thin protecting alien worlds." The room erupted into heated debate. Zixara felt her heart sink as she watched years of diplomatic progress crumble in the face of fear and self-interest. It was Blackwood who finally cut through the noise. "Enough," he roared, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. "Can't you see this is exactly what the enemy wants? To divide us, to keep us fighting amongst ourselves while they pick us off one by one." A hush fell over the chamber. Blackwood continued, his green eyes blazing with intensity. "We have an opportunity here. A chance to prove that we're better than our fears, better than the petty divisions that have held us back. Humans and Novanians fighting side by side against a common threat. Imagine the message that would send, not just to this swarm, but to every species in the galaxy." Zixara felt a surge of admiration for Blackwood. Even now, in the face of overwhelming odds, he hadn't lost sight of the bigger picture. President Varga studied Blackwood thoughtfully. "It's a noble idea, General, but how do you propose we implement it? The Novanian High Council has made their stance clear." This was her moment, Zixara realized. She stepped forward, drawing all eyes to her. "Leave the High Council to me," she said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomachs. "I may no longer be their official ambassador, but I still have connections, people who will listen. Give me a chance to rally my people, to show them that our only hope lies in standing together." For a long moment, silence reigned in the chamber. Then slowly, President Varga nodded. "Very well, Ambassador Zixara. You have 48 hours. Make them count." What followed was a whirlwind of frantic diplomacy and bold action. Zixara, with Blackwood at her side, raced against time to build a coalition of humans and Novanians willing to set aside their differences in the face of existential threat. They faced opposition at every turn. Hardliners on both sides decried their efforts as treasonous. There were attempts on their lives, betrayals by those they thought they could trust. But slowly, painstakingly, they began to make progress. Key to their efforts was a daring plan, a joint human-Novanian strike against a swarm staging area, designed to buy time for their fledgling alliance to gather strength. It was a high-risk gambit, one that would put their talk of cooperation to the ultimate test. As the combined fleet assembled, a motley assortment of human and Novanian vessels united under a common banner, Zixara felt a mix of pride and trepidation. This was it, the moment that would decide the fate of both their peoples. The battle, when it came, was unlike anything either species had faced before. The swarm lived up to its name, a seething mass of biomechanical horrors that seemed to defy the laws of physics. But the Allied fleet held firm, human ingenuity and adaptability meshing surprisingly well with Novanian technology and tactical acumen. Zixara found herself on the bridge of the flagship alongside Blackwood, coordinating the efforts of the disparate fleet. It was chaos, but there was a strange beauty to it, the sight of human and Novanian crews working in perfect harmony, saving each other's lives without hesitation. The turning point came when a swarm dreadnought broke through their lines, on a direct course for a vulnerable human colony ship. Without hesitation, a Novanian cruiser threw itself into the path of the monstrous vessel, buying time for colonists to escape at the cost of its own destruction. The sacrifice galvanized the fleet. Human ships avenged their Novanian allies with a ferocity that left even the swarm reeling. Novanian vessels pulled off daring rescue operations, plucking human pilots from the void in defiance of all odds. When the dust settled, the swarm staging area was in ruins, and the Allied fleet, though battered, stood victorious. More importantly, something fundamental had shifted. The crews, human and Novanian alike, looked at each other with new eyes, no longer as aliens or potential enemies, but as comrades who had faced death together and emerged stronger for it. As Zixara and Blackwood stood on the observation deck, watching the fleet begin its journey home, they knew that this was only the beginning. The swarm was still out there, and the road to true understanding between their peoples would be long and fraught with challenges. But for the first time, there was real hope. They had proven that cooperation was not just possible, but essential for survival. They had shown that the differences between their species could be a source of strength rather than division. Blackwood turned to Zixara, a weary but genuine smile on his face. "Well, Ambassador," he said softly, "I think we might just have a chance after all." Zixara felt her heart swell with an emotion she couldn't quite name. She reached out, taking Blackwood's hand in her own. "No, Marcus," she replied, her voice filled with warmth and determination. "We have more than a chance. We have a future." As they stood there, hand in hand, watching the stars, both knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, not just as allies, but as something more. Something that transcended the boundaries of species and spoke to a deeper, universal truth about the power of understanding, sacrifice, and love. A new future. 5 years had passed since the Battle of the Swarm staging area, a conflict now simply known as the turning point in both human and Novanian historical records. The galaxy had changed profoundly in those intervening years, reshaped by the ongoing war against the swarm and the deepening alliance between humanity and the Novanian collective. Zixara stood on the observation deck of the newly christened Joint Command Station Unity, her 4 eyes taking in the breathtaking view of Earth and its orbital habitats. The station, a marvel of combined human and Novanian engineering, stood as a testament to how far they had come. "Credit for your thoughts, Ambassador," a familiar voice rumbled behind her. Zixara turned, a smile spreading across her face as she saw Marcus Blackwood approaching. The years had added a few more streaks of grey to his hair, and new scars marked his face, but his green eyes still held that same intensity that had first captivated her. "Just reflecting on how much has changed," she replied, reaching out to take his hand. The gesture, once so alien to her, now felt as natural as breathing, and on how much remains to be done. Blackwood nodded, his expression thoughtful. "The swarm's not beaten yet, that's for sure, but every day we'd push them back a little further, and every day our peoples grow closer." It was true. The joint war effort had accelerated cultural exchange and technological cooperation beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Human cities now boasted Novanian architectural influences, while Novanian worlds had embraced human music and art with unexpected enthusiasm. Mixed crews were now the norm rather than the exception on both military and civilian vessels. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still pockets of resistance on both sides, those who clung to old prejudices or feared the loss of their cultural identity. And the war itself took a heavy toll, with losses that sometimes threatened to overwhelm even the most optimistic. The delegation from the Galactic Council arrives today, Zixara said, changing the subject. Are you ready for this? Blackwood's lip quirked in a half smile. As ready as I'll ever be. Never thought I'd see the day when I'd be playing diplomat instead of soldier. Zixara laughed softly. And I never imagined I'd be more comfortable on a battlefield than in a negotiation chamber. We've both come a long way, haven't we? Their conversation was interrupted by a chime from the station's communications system. General Blackwood, Ambassador Zixara, the Galactic Council delegation has begun docking procedures. Your presence is requested in the main reception hall. They shared a look, equal parts excitement and trepidation. This meeting could change everything. The Galactic Council, a loose federation of advanced spacefaring races, had long viewed both humans and Novanians with suspicion. Humans were seen as too aggressive and unpredictable, Novanians as too insular and set in their ways. But the joint effort against the swarm had forced the Council to reassess their stance. As they made their way to the reception hall, Zixara and Blackwood were joined by a diverse group of human and Novanian officials. President Varga was there, looking as formidable as ever despite the years. Beside her stood High Elder Kexley, the new leader of the Novanian collective, his presence a powerful symbol of how far Novanian society had evolved. The doors to the reception hall slid open, revealing a group of beings so varied in form and color that it momentarily took Zixara's breath away. At the head stood a tall, willowy creature with iridescent skin and eyes like swirling galaxies. "Welcome to Unity Station," President Varga said, stepping forward. "I am President Elena Varga of the United Earth Government. On behalf of humanity and our Novanian allies, we are honored by your presence." The willowy being inclined its head in a gesture of respect. "I am Sadaran, Chief Mediator of the Galactic Council. We have come to witness firsthand the alliance that has set the galaxy abuzz with speculation and, dare I say, hope." What followed was a whirlwind of introductions, tours, and intense discussions. The Council delegation was shown the integrated command centers where humans and Novanians worked side by side, the research labs where scientists from both species collaborated on groundbreaking technologies, and the cultural exchange centers that had become the heart of the new society they were building. Throughout it all, Zixara and Blackwood stood as living embodiments of the alliance, a Novanian and a human, once divided by fear and misunderstanding, now united in purpose, and though neither had yet found the courage to say it aloud, in love. As the day drew to a close, the delegation gathered in Unity Station's grand conference room for final deliberations. The tension in the air was palpable as Salaran rose to speak. "We came here skeptical," the mediator began, its melodious voice carrying easily through the room. "The history of the galaxy is littered with failed alliances and broken promises. But what we have witnessed here today," Salaran paused, its eyes sweeping the assembled group, "it gives us reason to hope." A collective breath seemed to be released around the room. Salaran continued, "The Galactic Council hereby extends an invitation to the Human Novanian Alliance to join our ranks as full members. Moreover, we pledge our support in your war against the swarm. Your fight is now our fight." The room erupted in cheers and applause. Years of hard work, sacrifice, and perseverance had finally paid off. They were no longer alone in their struggle against the swarm, and their place in the galactic community was secured. As the celebrations began in earnest, Zixara felt a gentle tug on her arm. She turned to find Blackwood gesturing towards a quiet corner of the room. They slipped away from the crowd, finding a moment of privacy. "We did it," Blackwood said softly, his eyes shining with emotion. "Against all odds, we actually did it." Zixara nodded, her own heart's full to bursting. "We've come so far, Marcus, from that first meeting when I was terrified of you, to this moment." Blackwood chuckled, "Terrified. and here I thought I was being charming. "Oh, you would terrify in your charm," Zixara teased. Then, her tone growing serious, she added, "But you know, I think I started falling for you that very day. I just didn't recognize it then." Blackwood's expression softened. He reached out, gently cupping Zixara's face in his hands. "I love you, Zixara. Across species, across star systems, against the backdrop of war and politics and everything else. I love you." Zixara felt a warmth spread through her entire being. "And I love you, Marcus Blackwood, my terrifying, charming, remarkable human." As their lips met in a kiss that bridged galaxies, Zixara knew that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, the ongoing war, the complexities of integrating their alliance into the larger galactic community, the personal journey of a love that defied conventional boundaries. But in that moment, with the sounds of celebration echoing around them and the stars shining bright beyond the station's viewports, Zixara was filled with an unshakable certainty. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. And in doing so, they would continue to forge a path towards a brighter, more united galaxy, one where understanding trumped fear, where diversity was strength, and where love knew no boundaries. As they rejoined the celebration, hand in hand, Zixara and Blackwood stood as living symbols of all that was possible when two worlds came together. Their journey from reluctant diplomats to warriors, leaders, and lovers had changed not just their own lives, but the very fabric of galactic society. The future stretched out before them, vast and full of possibility, and together they were ready to meet it head-on.